Jake from State Farm here, hanging out with Mel's Mow and Grow. Mel chose State Farm for small business insurance because his local agent is a small business owner too. So she knew how to help him personalize his policies. And now, he's rolling in the green. Like a good neighbor? Guys, I'm trying to do the line.
Oh, sorry, Jake.
It's all good. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Talk to an agent today.
This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello, and welcome back to the Curious Kid Podcast. If you've listened to any of the previous 3 episodes, you already know about our Thanksgiving fundraiser. Well, this is it. Thanksgiving Day is this Thursday. We are supporting a wonderful charity this year called Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation that raises money for children with cancer and their families. You can donate through the Curious Kid Podcast Facebook page. There are other ways you can help us raise money too. We will donate $1 for every new Facebook follow, Instagram follow, or 5-star Apple Podcasts review we receive through Thanksgiving Day. So take a few minutes to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and leave us a review. We would appreciate it so much, and it would help us raise money for Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. And even if you've already followed us on social media and left us a review, there are other ways to help us donate.
That's right. You can tell your friends about the Curious Kid Podcast.
You got it. You can always encourage your friends to listen to us and follow us, or leave a review. Last year we raised money for St. Jude Children's Hospital, and this year we hope to raise lots of money for Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. Thanks to those of you that have already donated through our Facebook page or helped us donate by following us or leaving a review for our podcast. We truly appreciate it. This week's episode is episode 60, which means it is a listener suggestion episode. I wonder what the listener suggestion is this week.
Mailbag.
Mailbag. Our mail this week comes from Henry and his dad Ross from Sydney, Australia. It says, "Dear Jacob and Olivia, my daddy and I love to listen to your podcast in the car on our way to school. I had a great idea for an episode this morning. How do cars work? Thank you, Henry, age 5, from Sydney, Australia."
Thank you for the suggestion, Henry. Today we're getting curious about cars for you.
As you can imagine, cars are super interesting and also really important. These days, if we are stuck in traffic, we might get upset because we aren't moving fast enough.
Imagine how long it took to get around before cars.
You don't even have to go back that far. Even after cars were invented, they weren't as powerful and as fast as they are today.
Today there are over 1 billion cars being used in the world.
Let me give you an idea of how big a number 1 billion is. It gets a bit confusing because 1 billion sounds a lot like 1 million. Turns out that the numbers aren't even close to each other. You need 1,000 millions to get 1 billion. So there are lots and lots of cars in the world, which makes sense because they are so important to most of us in our everyday lives. What's the question of the week?
The question of the week is, how many parts does the average car have?
Fun question.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Frame. Mother's Day is almost here. What are you getting her? Something that shows you care. Something that makes her feel loved. Something that won't stress you out. Something like the Skylight Frame. The Skylight Frame is the perfect gift. It's a touchscreen photo frame your whole family can upload photos to, from wherever they are in the world. It's a way to share with her all the moments that matter. It sets up in seconds. You can even make sure that it's already loaded with photos when your mom opens her Mother's Day gift. And her Skylight Frame can hold thousands of the treasured photos you share. It's an easy, heartfelt way for mom to stay connected with those who matter most. It really is the perfect gift. Now, as a special Mother's Day offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightframe.com/easy.
Okay, let's discuss the history of the car. The modern car was first made in 1886 by a man named Carl Benz. 2 years later, Carl's wife Bertha took the car for a long trip. Many people didn't believe it would work, but she was able to drive long distances, even though she had to fix the car a little bit along the way.
Then Ralph Diesel invented a new engine in 1897.
That engine came to be known as the diesel-powered engine. Just 5 years later, a man by the name of Ransom Olds started making cars on a production line, and you wouldn't believe what he called them.
He called them Oldsmobiles.
He was able to make lots of Oldsmobiles using a production line. That's when you put cars together in a factory and different people and machines add parts until the car is ready to go. Until Ransom Olds used production lines to make his Oldsmobiles, cars were usually made by a single person.
That sounds like hard work.
I'm sure it was. I'm also sure it took a long time to do it that way. 6 years later, in 1908, Henry Ford improved the production line process so that cars could be made very quickly. Because of Ford's improvements, it took only 1.5 hours to make a car. This made cars cheaper to buy.
Were people buying lots of Ford cars in 1908?
Not quite. In 1908, one of Ford's cars would have cost about $825. That's about $22,000 in today's money. Lots of people started buying them, but it wasn't until just before 1950 that the average vehicles per household would hit 1. And in the late 1970s, the average vehicles per household was 2. Let's face it, cars 100 years ago didn't have lots of the conveniences that we have in our cars today. Can you think of some things we have in cars now that were not in any of the cars 100 years ago?
I don't think the cars had a radio or the sunroof.
Those are great answers. You're right. Cars didn't have either of those two things. There are so many things that make today's cars awesome, and none of them were in cars 100 years ago, like air conditioning, power windows, GPS, airbags, instant starters, and seat warmers.
There also weren't a lot of options for different car styles and colors.
That's very true. All Oldsmobiles looked the same, and all Fords looked the same. Different makes, models, and colors wouldn't appear until later.
Daddy, I don't think we answered Henry's question yet.
Thanks for reminding me. Henry wanted to know how cars work. Well, Henry, the oldest cars date back to 1769, and they were steam-powered.
Those cars can only go 6 miles per hour.
That's not fast at all. I can run at that speed, and Olivia can probably run at that speed for short distances too. Steam-powered cars were not very convenient at all, because you could get places faster by horse.
The first cars didn't even have steering wheels.
They had levers instead. I'm not really sure how that worked, but I don't think it would be easy to steer a car with a lever.
Most cars today are gas-powered.
Cars need energy just like us, and many cars get their energy from gas. That's why we go to the gas station. Cars have engines that use that energy to turn the wheels. Engines have cylinders and pistons. The gas in the car helps push the piston up and down, which in turn moves the wheel round and round.
Are there any other popular cars besides gas-powered cars?
There sure is. Electric cars are becoming more and more popular. That's because they don't need gas at all. They can be powered by battery only. So you would just need to charge the battery to give it energy instead of going to the gas station. This is also great for the environment because gas-powered cars lead to pollution.
Electric cars sound great. Why doesn't everyone have one?
There are a few reasons why someone wouldn't get an electric car. First, electric cars are more expensive to buy than the gas-powered cars.
Wouldn't you save a lot of money because you don't need gas?
That's a great point. Electric cars are more expensive to buy, but much cheaper to maintain because you don't need gas. Assuming gas is $4 a gallon, and your gas-powered car gets 25 miles per gallon, it would cost you $16 in fuel to travel 100 miles. An electric car can travel the same 100 miles for as little as 75 cents, depending on your local kilowatt per hour rate. People are also nervous about buying electric cars because they are concerned about range.
Range is how far you go without charging the battery.
Exactly. Gas-powered cars are convenient because gas stations are all over the place. Finding a place to charge your electric car is a bit more complicated. For people concerned about range, there are hybrid cars that operate by both gas and electric, so that the battery is used first, and if your battery loses energy, gas can be used instead. Car manufacturers are making more and more electric cars, so before long, electric cars will probably make up the majority of cars on the road. Other changes might also come before you are old enough to drive.
There might be self-driving cars by then.
Can you believe it? Self-driving cars are already being tested, so within a few years, all cars might just start driving themselves.
I guess we won't need a steering wheel anymore.
That's right. Just like the oldest steam-powered cars, we won't need a steering wheel when we have self-driving cars. Okay, do you want to take a guess how many parts are in the average car?
I think there are 8,000 parts in a car.
That's a great guess. You aren't going to believe this. The average car has about 30,000 parts. This includes everything. Every bolt, every washer, every screw, and every bearing. Every single part. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, number 60 on cars.
Great job, Olivia. Thanks so much to Henry from Australia for the great suggestion. Our next suggestion episode is going to come from a listener in California who gave us a fantastic suggestion. As always, thank you so much for listening and getting curious with us.